We're really happy that you would join us this morning. Man, a beautiful morning after some much needed rain and moisture. I don't know about you, but I've been really thankful to get that moisture. Bob, he was just out singing in the rain. So, hello.
Is this Mr. Rogers' neighborhood?
No, but I thought maybe you were, oh shoot, I had his name until you said Mr. Rogers, but yeah, the good dancer.
What? The good
Clark,
dancer?
what were the couple that were good dancers? And he did Dancing in the Rain.
Yeah. I know, but if you had asked me,
yeah.
I'll remember in a bit.
I had it and I lost it.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
So yeah, that's too bad, huh?
Well, you're going to be my age now.
I know. It's getting closer all the time.
Everything is fresh every day.
There you
Isn't
go.
That cool? Just like God.
Boom.
He said, I forgot yesterday.
Boom shaka.
Law.
Oh, man.
Yeah, just good to be here, man.
I tell you what, I know.
Yeah.
Well,
Gene Kelly.
Oh, yeah? Was that
Gene
it?
Kelly. Yeah.
Man.
Gene Kelly.
Yeah, and who was the lady that was such a great dancer with you?
I don't know.
Oh, well. That has absolutely zero spiritual value. So we'll move on.
It's all about God's ambiance.
Oh, there you go. We're setting the stage.
God's people doing great
Is that
things.
good? So
God's people doing great things.
Amen. And they are.
Grace Kelly? No. No. I'm sorry.
Man.
See, you get me on something, and we're done.
Fred Astaire.
Fred Astaire. That's his name.
Yeah.
And Gene Kelly.
So there you go. Yeah. See. Right. So I'm just saying, you're out there dancing like Fred Astaire in the rain.
You know they're Googling this just to make sure if we're not really idiots, but
Well, no matter what the answer is, that would be a yes.
There'll be a confirmation. There'll be a confirmation.
So,
God chose the foolish things of this earth to confound the wise.
Boom.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. That's okay. I think we're done now. So, boom. Yeah. So
do we have another fishing lure coming by?
Yeah. No.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah. I had just the most refreshing conversation yesterday morning with a young man. He's 24 years old, and God got a hold of him, and it was really cool. It was really a between him and God kind of meeting. I mean, he'd kind of grown up in church and whatnot, and God just has this young man lit up. And man, and I mean, he's out sharing the Word. He's studying the Word, and in our conversation, it was obvious that he was doing a really good job of his personal study. And but man, he was just like, God, wherever you want to send me. Wow. Whatever you want to do. And he'd happened to meet some folks down in Tucson that knew me, and he was just kind of looking for a little bit of guidance and wanting to connect with somebody who'd been in ministry for a while. And it was just a real encouraging conversation. Because honestly, as I've watched America this last 18 months, it's been with a growing sense of despair, because the America that I grew up in, that I served and served with such pride in the military, is really being taken from us, and a lot of that is because America's turned her back on God. We trust our riches. We trust our phenomenal military. We trust in our economy, and we don't really trust in God. And so consequently, God has gotten shut out of more and more and more of our lives. Right. And we kind of feel like we got all this, so who needs God? Right. And it's so sad because the key to civilization is civil, and that's out the window. So before I get going on too far, what do you guys
take it away, Pastor Bob?
Well, it's interesting because you talk about this America we live in, and nothing's guaranteed except for one thing that Jesus said. And in the
wasn't death and taxes?
Death and taxes, no. He wasn't even worried about taxes. And he wasn't worried about death.
He'd just go catch him in the lake.
That's where we're at. We're worried about taxes and death.
Yep.
And he's not worried about that. But what he did tell us as his disciples and his church is that the world that we live in, and here's a translation, is fallen.
Yes.
And so what are we surprised about? Well, what we're surprised about, and what has always been a trap, has been the table set with abundance.
Mm.
We were reading about that in Romans 11 last night, and how God would really harshly talk about, you depend on this table set with abundance, and now you are going to be bent over forever because of that. And so sometimes we take for granted God's prosperity and the fact that in the United States of America we are the best, and we say that with pride.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're finally beginning to see a glimpse of what the fallen world's about. And I'm saying, a good portion of the United States has already been there, seen, because you come from a part of the country, the little south of you, the Appalachians, and I come from south and southern New Mexico, where we grew up, and it wasn't all this abundance, but we were still rich.
Yeah, never missed a meal
Rich.
unless I was late.
Yeah, I mean, and my dad, probably much like your dad, and your auntie, who raised you? Your mom raised you, and she probably said, "Hey, I just want better for you."
Yep.
And I just remember those very distinct words. I just want you to do better than me.
Yeah.
In that, and I got to thinking about our kids growing up, and I told them, you know what? I can't tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I just want you to pursue God better than I did at your age.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, I think that's truth. And so the conundrum is the fact that now here, how do we respond to these new circumstances? And there's two different ways to respond. So anyway, I'll leave it right there because I need to look up a couple scriptures.
Okay.
What gets me is, God's supposed to be our foundation.
Yeah.
And it's like once we remove that foundation, we're going to fall.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, good picture.
So, our forefathers, God was the foundation.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And now that we removed God, of course, this world is going to fall.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So until we open up our eyes and realize that we need to put God back into the picture, nothing is going to get better. It's just going to get worse. Yeah.
Jesus said what you're saying, that a man who hears my words and puts them into practice is like a man who builds his house on solid rocky ground.
Exactly. Yep.
And when the storm came and the winds beat upon it, it stood.
Right. Right.
And those who don't take my words and put them into practice are like the man who built his house on the sand.
Yep.
And when the rains came and the wind blew, their house fell, and great was the calamity of it.
Exactly.
And so I think it's really, so what you're saying is just right out of the word. And it's funny because on the opposite side of that, I think those of us who really are trying to model our lives, including our finances, after God's principles.
Right.
Yeah, we don't necessarily get rich. Bob did, but for the rest of us,
we just survive.
but we do all right.
Right. Exactly.
We don't lack for anything good.
Right.
And so
let me throw this.
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to throw this out there.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the time that we're living in, what y'all think about this saying, carelessness living versus conscious living?
Ooh.
What comes to mind to that with that?
I like the word intentional.
Okay.
Careless
Instead of
really explains itself.
Right.
It's not considered with anything. We just came off a subject of stewardship and things like that, and so I just have a carefree attitude, and I don't consider the cost for anything. And I have no problem running up any kind of debt because I'm going to get a stimulus check. And then with the stimulus check, I don't worry about the debt. I just go buy another
car.
Something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you just kind of live, well, no matter what, I'm going to be all right. And so I don't have to do anything. Right. And again, that's put in a kind of a harsh way. But a lot of people feel, well, you know what, I can make it. So it doesn't matter what happens. Some people have that cavalier attitude. And for right reasons, because they're industrious and they go after things, and they do live intentionally. Right. But whether that is the case or not, there is a difference in how, if I have this perception of a world, it depends on my perception of this world. And if I think there's nothing else after this world,
Yeah, right.
and I have a zeal and I take initiative, I can make it here.
Right.
I can make it here. But ultimately, is there God or is there not in that whole circumstance? And so how I handle a pandemic, I may just have this, I'm going to get it no matter what attitude. But most people feel the burden of not only the pandemic, but all of the things one after the other, with storms and fires and with hurricanes and typhoons and all that stuff that's hitting, power outages and snowstorms, 40 inches in Denver this past weekend, and they didn't have power on and off a little bit, and those kind of things. They weren't burning the furniture quite, but I mean, you start thinking about, can this happen to us? And if I ask that, then I'm stupid, because it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's happening. Terrorist stuff and all of those kind of things. The realities of some of the best scripts Hollywood has ever put out are happening today.
Yeah. Or the scripts that the Bible put out.
Well, and that's where we're going to go.
Yeah.
What's our look?
Yeah.
What is our look?
Well, and just commenting on that, I mean, to learn. I mean, I grew up, with very little. My dad didn't take on the farm, excuse me, so he worked. But up in the northeast part of the country, especially during the Carter years, the plant would come up and they'd come down. I ran this morning. And so he'd be in work, out of work. And he wasn't the most stable guy, and Mom would work sometimes. And he'd grow a big garden. He's a hard-working man, strong man. And so it's just kind of wild because, we kind of lived hand to mouth. And so early on when I had money, it was a chance to get the things that I missed out on, quote, growing up. Having soda when I wanted one. Going to getting a soda pop and a candy bar was a huge deal. Huge deal. And I started earning money at 12. I had my first job at 12 years old. And, and I married Brenda, and Brenda is very conscientious about money, and because I got saved at 17, I had a decent paying job. And so, I mean, first thing I learned was, take that tithe off the top. So that was good, and we met our obligations, but Brenda was very conscious and taught me to be in. And, when you go to Denver Seminary, they send you to a financial conference, how to handle finances. And so I'd been to 2 or 3 of those, and, I'm thick, but little by little it seeped in. And so that we'd actually not just tithe, but actually put money in savings. Have a Christmas club where when Christmas came, we didn't have to go and touch our other finances because we'd been putting away for it all year. And so learning how to live intentionally, I won't sell my vehicles flat out because I'm not a mechanic, and I don't want, let's just say I sold you my old truck and come find out the transmission was on its last legs. Right. Well, man, I couldn't look you in the eye. Right. So, I take a hit by going to a dealership to trade it in, but I know they're going to go over it. Right. Yep. And so when they sell it, it'll have been licked over, properly with good mechanics. So, it cost me a couple grand, but my reputation's intact. Yeah, there you go. So far. Yeah. So.
I was perusing a particular article, and it was really nice because it's just 5 bullet points, honestly. And this guy named Akos Balo, he's the executive director of Gospel Coalition Australia. And he has his master's in theology and is a trained, whatever this means, combat and aerospace engineer. So that sounds pretty interesting. But he talked about lessons that we have to really grab a hold of during this pandemic global. I mean, he's talking from the same position we are. I mean, this thing is all over the world. Several countries in Europe and places are locking down again because it's hidden. And so he's saying 6 lessons I've been reminded of over the last few weeks. Life in a fallen world is not meant to be comfortable.
Right. Ooh.
That's good.
And what do we fight for?
Comfort.
Our comfort. Why? Because that's what we know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't care who we are. Even if you just got a 1-room place, you probably have one of those nice recliners somewhere that you plop in, and maybe a snack in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
We want our life of comfort. And so, but what happens when a broken world will not allow that?
Mm-hmm.
So now what? And so I thought that was really a great point.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly, we talked about this, I think, a couple Bible studies ago, about the fact that the curse is not lifted.
Mm.
And in Romans 8, it says, the world groans. The world is in groaning. What's it groaning for? And man is groaning, and Holy Spirit is groaning, and it's for the manifestation of the sons of God. That doesn't happen until even past the millennial reign.
Yeah. Well, and if you look at what the course this nation is on right now,
Yeah.
to me it feels
Yeah.
like a curse.
Yeah. I agree. Well, like I said, comfort is what
we
it's
brought
all
it on
about.
ourselves because
Yeah,
we've turned our
it
back
is.
on God, but that's what it feels like, is that we're coming under what I think a lot of nations have lived under
And
for
what
decades.
does that create for us? I need to gain control.
Ooh.
I can't let this spiral out of control in my life. And I so appreciated you guys when in the midst of this pandemic, you thought about me and my family, my wife, because you gave us a roll of toilet paper a month for my salary.
Yes.
And I've been so excited. However, I only saw one roll of toilet paper, so that's how good that is.
Yeah.
But I mean,
give me clean hands. You know that song.
Whatever control I can gain, and that's what hoarding's all about.
Oh.
I want to control, and so I'm going to control the space within my house. So I'm going to have a roll of toilet paper for 365 days of the year.
Yeah.
Right?
In storage right
in
now.
storage
Yep.
right now. And nothing wrong with preparing for things. And so I'm not saying, I think you're wise if you do prepare, some emergency things. We still have some Y2K ready water down in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's from the year 2000. We still have that, so we're ready, right?
That was a really good year.
That was a good year.
I was told that was a really good year. Yeah.
That
Vintage.
and a bottle of wine. And so, but then the third thing he mentions, I said, the pandemic is God's severe mercy. You ever heard that term? His severe mercy.
Wow.
We talked about that last night because we were in Romans, the 11th chapter, and in Romans 11, this talks about, as you're familiar with, the olive tree and the branches, and the fact that the Gentiles are grafted into that.
Yep.
And so it's really, really cool. But then it has this thing. It says, granted, when the branches were broken off so that I could be grafted in, that's talking about the Jewish people.
Yep.
And then the Gentiles being grafted in. And here's the admonition now. In verse 20 of Romans 11, branches were broken off so that I could be grafted in. Granted, but they were broken off because of unbelief, and you stand by faith. Do not be arrogant, but be afraid. For if God did not spare the natural branches, he will not spare you either. Consider, therefore, the kindness and sternness of God. Sternness to those who fell, but kindness to you, provided that you continue in his kindness. Otherwise, you also will be cut off. But there's a sternness to God. And so what's sternness about? Are you a stern parent? Is that bad?
I don't think it's bad if you're doing it out of love.
Right?
Yep,
And
yep.
what is God? God is?
Love.
So when he's saying that, he is doing it for restoration, reconciliation, all of those things, because he would promise the branches that were cut off that if they turned to him, they would be grafted back in.
Right.
And so there's mercy in all of that. And so I thought this point that he made, better response, the pandemic is God's severe mercy. And if we do go there, then Matthew 6 comes into full view. Seek ye first
The kingdom of God.
Right.
And so God's people in the midst of a tragedy, catastrophe, and all those will ultimately come to that place that you've talked about very often in 1 Chronicles, the 7th chapter. Humble yourself and pray.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's a great thing. The next one, then he says, a better response in panic and hoarding, look out for the needs of others. That's what a Christian community does. That's what an individual does.
Right.
Take one of those 365 rolls of toilet paper, throw it over the backyard if you don't want to get the pandemic. Just throw it over and say, hey, this one's for you.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's why we gave you a bonus for Christmas.
I know, and I was so excited. I'm still got goose pimples. And then be careful who you listen to. Great advice. Because there's so much. I said, and we talked a little bit about news last night in our Bible study, and I don't think anyone said, well, I don't listen to that stuff. And I said, that's good. I don't think we should take a diet of that. But it's not bad to read what's going on, just to be in the knowledge, but to get stuck in that rut is not good.
Hey, but that's true. I mean, I think a lot of us Christians, we want to stay out of the media and things like that, but we don't know what's going on.
Right.
Now, if you have an issue with, that media getting the best of you, I understand you got to stay out of it. But we got to be knowledgeable as well as what's going on. That's why I love talking to you guys, because y'all keep me in the know, especially in politics and all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? So I love talking to you guys, So, but I think that's important.
I encouraged our class last night to be involved, because we have a country where you can be involved. Whether you feel your voice is being heard or not, you can still voice. And know your senators, know your representatives, write them. And they say, well, what should we write? I'm not telling you what to write. What's in your heart. Right. Period. Express what you feel.
That's one downfall that I love being on staff here. Don't get me wrong, okay? But when I was at the high school full time, I was dealing with these at-risk students, and I would be in their know.
Yeah.
I would be in their
You were in their
all the
world,
time.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they open up. I mean, they raw honest, but when we come to church, kids don't want to be that honest. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like,
so we're not providing a safe space?
You would think we were.
I think so. We're
right.
Nice. Yeah.
But just knowing the know, especially it helped me to relate more to the kids.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that's the issue in my youth group right now. It's like we have to pull teeth to get them to really talk and open up. You know what I'm saying?
For sure. I understand that.
But
that's honestly one of the best things when I was in the Reserve and Guard, is that week in a month, you got this circle of people, many of them unchurched.
Right.
And, and it didn't take them long to know who I was and who I served. And man, that just led to all kinds of harvest opportunities.
Exactly.
And people appreciated that. And for me, because I was out there with them, and I miss being out there in a group of people, doing life with them, doing what they're doing, living life the way, and I'm talking career-wise, the way they are.
Right.
And so they know that you can hang with what they do, because everybody knows that we just, show up and speak for a few minutes and then go home and take a nap. So, so it's just kind of fun, when you're in their world.
Right. So let me ask you this, and y'all, from your perspective, do you think that, especially in my youth group, and maybe just in church general, people really don't open up because they might feel that they're going to get judged?
I think you're 100% right. I mean, I don't think there's any other explanation.
In other words, church folks is quick to judge. Is that what we're saying?
Not everybody, but I think that's certainly a stigma that has to be dispelled, because we constantly talk about that's not who we are, that's not who we want to be.
Right.
And that's still something you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Exactly.
But to gain the trust of someone, where just like you said, I was in the world with them, and that's what exactly Jesus told us to do: be in the world, but don't be of the world.
Yeah.
And so I think that's our biggest challenge, without going Christianese on people, especially young people and those who said, I don't want to have anything to do with church, because everyone, good portion of the people in the United States don't want to have anything to do with churches now, because I think they do feel that very strongly. And so you have to be real, and at the same time, here's the thing I struggle with. You have to be real, and you have to be completely respectful of who God is. And so do I bend over backwards to be real and just provide them with the same environment to make them comfortable? And I'm talking not only about youth, I'm talking about everybody. So we bend over backwards just to be comfortable. And then how do we reflect the respect and honor of God?
I hear you.
You know?
But you hit something on the head, though. creating a safe spot, a safe
Yes.
place. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I think, like Pastor Manny said, you know, it didn't take long for his fellas to know who he is and who
Right.
he represents.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
yet they felt super safe with him. You know what I'm saying? So I think it is important to create, even in this right here, it is important that we create a safe place where people can be
Right.
transparent.
Right.
Because when they begin to let that junk go, that's when healing begins to take place.
Well,
You know?
and there's two parts to that. It needs to be a safe place, and you know. But you also got to know that as we're being real, we're not being real to stay here.
Right, exactly.
We're being real
Whoa.
because we don't want to stay
Right,
here.
Exactly.
Whoa,
That's
whoa,
good.
whoa, whoa.
That's good.
And so I think it's really, I take issue. I mean, 5 years ago, I would have been a whole lot more comfortable with the idea that people are afraid of church people judging them. But I'd never seen so much judgment going on out there in the world. We don't hold a candle. We don't hold a candle to what's going on
Yeah,
out
we're
there.
rookies, man.
Hey, you read Dr. Seuss, you're evil.
Right.
What?
I mean, what? Yeah, I mean, how judgmental has the world gotten?
Right.
I don't know how to be that vile.
Wow, you're going really out of PC mode.
So, it's keeping it real,
Oh, that's
keeping
right.
it 100.
That's right. I forgot.
So we're keeping it 100 right now.
Poor Dr.
But you
Seuss.
know, but this is the thing: is this cancel culture? The church can't hold a candle to this cancel culture.
right.
It's so beyond heinous that, you know. I mean, you know, I told Bob, I'm like, Scotty, beam me up. There's no intelligent life on this planet. You know, like we were kind of talking a little bit about the rapture, but I'm like, holy cow.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, and that's where we got to struggle, because it is offensive,
Right.
and I'm struggling with offense and not being offended, and I have to fight that every day.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's so funny how quick this culture that we're in right now, so quick to judge others and condemn.
Right.
And I mean, you know, and I mean, I've had people, you know, imply that I'm headed to hell. You know, I'm like, okay.
If you headed to hell, I'm headed to hell too. So
It's just wild, you know, how judgmental people are, and they'll be the first ones to say, "Oh, don't you dare judge me."
Right.
So I'm cutting the church some slack
I hear you.
with what I
hear
see
you.
going on
I
out
hear
there.
you.
Holy cow!
Well, I think this is worthy of jumping on next week a little bit, because the last thing he mentions is there's a significant difference how the world responds to where we're at right now and how Christians respond. And it goes exactly to what you're talking about. Is this our end game?
Right.
And nowhere in the Bible does it say this place was Jesus's end
In
game
game, exactly.
and his
Exactly.
disciples' end game.
Right.
And so that's transferred to us. And so now how then do we behave
Right.
if this is not the end game?
Mhm.
And we'll respond a lot differently.
Right.
You know,
we
than-
should
than
respond a lot differently. Yeah.
And then it gets down to what in the world does God do by His discipline when we experience this? What does that suffering have to do with anything?
Mhm.
And how do I respond to suffering? And that's a huge thing.
Right,
And
right.
each one of us has gone through this potentially life-threatening situation during the last year or so, and a lot of people out there and a lot of people in here have those kind of very real things. So polls, Pew, you know what Pew Research is? They have come out and said what this has done is increase the faith in about 45% of who they interview, and increased the faith of those and made them stronger in the relationship with God. And why? Well, because you start dealing with those life and death issues on a daily. You realize that you're not immortal.
Yeah.
Here.
Right.
Yeah. All of a sudden, the world's not such a safe place.
Yeah, and you either come to the fact that you're just going to be worm food, or you're going to follow the path of Jesus. And you know, in my mind, that's an easy. If no other reason to come to Christ, if you want to be worm food, stay where you're at. And if you don't, hey, go ahead and dig into Jesus a little bit, because
there
he's got a little bit different thing to do. But so I said, there's a difference between how Christians, when I should respond, and how I do deal with suffering, and what that does for literally an attitude and where I go. Right. So when I have an outlook like that, but I wanted to get into Hebrews 12, but we can do that next week.
Yeah, well, and I just want to kind of end on a positive note. Because this young man, Marcus, that I was talking to yesterday, he's 24, all lit, and he's ready to go win his generation. Yeah. And what's really cool is that he has a cousin that's 17, and they're doing deep Bible study like every day. And then they're going out and they're impacting their generation. And that's really what his desire and his passion is, win his generation. Exactly. And so my word of encouragement is God raises up a generation of lit up, empowered, Holy Spirit empowered people that are equipped uniquely for their age, and they send them out, and I mean, whoa.
They on fire.
These guys, man. I mean, I'm just so excited for the impact they will have on their generation. And so it's just, God is on the move.
Yeah, he is.
This is digging us deep and pulling all kinds of stuff.
Right.
So God hasn't gone anywhere. And when you and I are worm food, the kingdom's going to keep on trucking.
That's it.
So
that's good
and
stuff.
we follow in him.
That's good.
That's
stuff.
it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the great thing that you've said, God has constantly said this: I have retained a remnant. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing. I want to think of revival in terms of tens and hundreds of thousands. But God, if you think about how God has done His work, He does it through a few that are 100% committed.
Yep.
You talk about Gideon. He didn't go in with his tens of thousands that he originally had.
Yeah.
He cut him back to 300 people. He didn't discharge and get rid of the other people.
No.
He just said, you're going to go in with these warriors.
Yep.
And I think that's what we're seeing in this generation. People like Marcus, did you say? Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And I see that because I get to, everybody gets to see this younger generation, and I see tremendous hope.
Yeah, I remember the Passion Movement a few years back, and, and what God did among young people in the Passion Movement. And, and so I'm excited to see what the movement's going to be this season, because man, those young believers that get raised up, man, they are going to be wow. So man, we hope that you're encouraged, and you don't need to live in fear because God is able. Amen. So stay steady, stay that faithful remnant. And take God's word, put it to work so that you can be that solid house on solid ground. God bless you.
Amen.